one critical point in positive reinforcement is to have the right timing. What do I mean by that? In order for a dog to learn something, you have a certain time frame in between the action and the consequence. That means in our case, our dog is doing what we ask him to do. And now we have a time frame from about 2 seconds to provide him with a consequence. I give you an example. I ask my dog to sit. He is sitting. And now I have 21, 22 seconds time to hand him his reward. That means as long as he's next to me, that's pretty easy, right? The moment he's further away from me, this can become kind of tricky. This is why we use something in our training which is called a secondary reinforcer. And I'm pretty sure that you know that, you're familiar with that. It's a clicker, or you can also use a marker word. So what happens here is, or what that marker word or what this clicker is doing is, it is bridging. It gives you more time in between the behavior you ask the dog for and the moment you give him actually the reward. This makes it way easier. So let's have a look at this video here. So what I'm doing in positive reinforcement is I lure the dog in the sit, I mark it with my clicker, so he knows, oh, I did it right, and now I have plenty of time to give him his reward. So one more time, let's give a recap. You have a time frame from around about 2 seconds to make an association, to learn something, right? This can be kind of tricky when the dog is further away and you have to bridge this. And this is pretty much what the clicker is doing here. The clicker increases that time frame. So the moment you hit the clicker, the dog knows, hey, I did something right. And then either you use it as a release command, that means the dog can break the position, or you use it as a remain command, then the dog has to remain in the certain position. In any way, the dog knows he did something right, and now you have plenty of time to give him his reward. Just keep in mind, before you can use a clicker, you have to charge it. How to do that, I'm going to show you at the end of this video with a little puppy who never did this in his entire life before. So you can pretty much see the real deal how to do that. Second of all, it is important that clicker or the marker is a promise, and it's a promise for your reward. That means even if you accidentally hit the clicker or used your marker word, you have to reward your dog. And now I mentioned it several times. Either you can use a clicker as a secondary reinforcer, or you can use a marker word. There are some people, they are like, you know what, I don't like to use a clicker. I rather have use a marker word. You can do the same thing. For instance, I use the word yes or ja in German. I also have to condition this first. I have to charge it, same way as I would do this with a clicker. The reason why I love to work with a clicker in the very beginning is it is a very unique tone. It is very clear to the dog, because when you do this with your voice, and for instance you use the word yes, imagine you speak English and someone asks you, hey, would you like to do this today? Yes. Are we going to the restaurant tonight? Yes. So where I'm heading to is, we use this word yes so many times in our daily life that it is harder for the dog to figure out that this is a unique marker word. This is why I love to use the clicker in the very beginning. Later on, down the road, I exchange this with a marker word. So in the beginning, I just teach my dog both the marker word yes or ja and a clicker. The clicker is a secondary reinforcer. You can imagine that there must be a primary reinforcer. And the primary reinforcer is either your food or, for instance, a ball. This is what the dog desires. This is what he gets after you marked it. So the rule of thumb is the primary reinforcer is food or ball. The secondary reinforcer is then your clicker or your marker word, which pretty much promise the primary reinforcer. It's as simple as that. The technical terms, they also do have a third reinforcer. and I'm pretty sure, no, I do know that this is not the correct word. It's treasury or something like that. I do not know this because I'm a dog trainer, not an English teacher. But I think you know what I'm talking about or where I'm heading to. And this is easier to understand as a hold command or keep going signal. That means, let's say I do my heel work. In the very beginning, I motivate my dog with food to do that. Later on, I show him with a secondary reinforcer, clack, clack. You did a great job, you get your reward. I do this quite quick to make sure the dog gets an idea from the exercise. Later on, I want him to heel multiple steps, 10, 15, 20, to make sure that the dog still has a good feeling while he's doing it without a reward. I can use a keep going signal. That means I'm heeling with him. In German, I use the word brav, that means good boy. And this shows my dog, hey, you're doing a great job. Keep on doing this. And I promise you, you will get your secondary reinforcer, which then leads to the primary reinforcer, which is your food or your ball. So all in all, you have 3 different kind of reinforcers: primary, secondary, and tertiary. Before you can use your secondary reinforcer, you have to charge or to load your marker word or your clicker. And how you can do this, I'm going to show you in this video.
Obelix. Come. Obelix. Cool. Good. Ay, 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 ay. Good, my Junge. Good. So it's pretty much only click food, click food, click food to condition the clicker. He of course has no understanding for what that means, but it's funny to see I click and he's like, whoa, what is that? But the click for him later will of course be his release. This will be the sign, okay, you are getting something because you did something awesome. Good. Try to make sure that you really click and then you move your hand towards the food, that he understands that that is the reward, also the release. Otherwise, something that is non-verbal or not sounding to him is more dominant than my click actually. So I want to click and then move. I don't want to move and click at the same time. Important little detail to think about. Obelix. I click again, took too long. But you see no reaction yet, so it's quite interesting to see. Believe me, after a few sessions, you will see the dog jumping from joy when he hears the click. Obelix. Drop some kibbles.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. It's very simple and easy. My suggestion is when you do this exercise, find a place with less distraction. I wouldn't recommend to do this in a park where you are having 100 million dogs, or I also wouldn't do this on the training field where are other dogs playing around with the ball. This is just too much for your young dog. I did it now in our training hall. I was alone. You can do the same in your kitchen, in your basement, or in your backyard. Just make sure that you have less distractions and then you can scale it up from there. This was it for this video. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video. Another way of teaching your dog a new exercise is with negative reinforcement. What we have learned so far is we know that if we want to modify a behavior, every behavior is supposed to be followed by a consequence. And in this case, it's negative reinforcement. And once again, negative doesn't mean that it's bad for the dog. No, negative means we take something away from the dog. And what could this be? The best way, or one of the easiest way to understand that, is when you have a look at your car. When you get into the car, you start the engine, but for whatever reason you forgot to fasten the seatbelt, what happens? And a very, very annoying tone starts. Dig-a-ding, dig-a-ding, dig-a-ding. Does it ring a bell? Pretty much. Is it hurting you? No. Are you scared of that tone? No. But it is annoying, right? It is as annoying that at a certain point you're like, you know what? I buckle up. And now be honest, isn't that a great feeling when this annoying tone stops? Yes. And the interesting fact is that the automobile industry, they try to teach your behavior. They want to modify your behavior. And what is it what they want? They want you to get into the car, buckle up first, and then start the engine because of some safety reasons. And we can use the same idea in our dog training. It is not 100% exactly the same, but it is one of the easiest way to understand it. And this is what this course is all about. I want you to understand how dog training is working in a very easy and effective way. So this example is not 100% correct, but it's one of the easiest way to understand negative reinforcement. So let's go back to our dog. What we do now is, instead of using a tone, we are using a leash. And we are using a very, very gentle leash pressure. The dog is not scared from that leash pressure. The dog should not be hurt from that, but it should be annoying, like a little fly. You remember the fly? Let's say it's a beautiful summer evening. It's 10 o'clock in the evening. You want to go to bed. You want to sleep. You close your eyes and suddenly it starts. Does it sound familiar to you? This is Chucky, the murder mosquito. You're not scared of this mosquito. It doesn't hurt you, but it is so annoying that you get up and you hunt that mosquito. And this is pretty much the same what we're doing with our dogs. The only difference is we're using a leash with a very, very gentle leash pressure. So let's have a look at this little puppy here, how we are teaching him sit with negative reinforcement. I still have some kibbles of food in my hand to get focus and concentration from the dog. In addition to that, I have a leash around his neck, and now I pull very, very gentle up. This is a non-verbal signal for the dog to sit down. The moment the dog sits is the moment when I stop pulling on that lead. And this is negative reinforcement. I took away the slightly unpleasant feeling from that leash pressure. Reinforcement because the dog is doing what I asked him to do, and this is the sit exercise. So as you can see, negative reinforcement is not so negative in a way that it's bad for the dog, but it's a very, very good way to teach your dog an exercise. And as you already know, these are the missing 50% when it comes to reinforcement. Reinforcement is when you want to teach your dog an exercise. Just make sure that you have a good timing and a good dosage when it comes to that leash pressure. The dosage should be as less as possible and only as much as necessary. And you have seen it in the video. It is not necessary to pull super hard here. It is actually the opposite. Less is more. And when it comes to the timing, just make sure that you stop the moment your dog is doing what you want. And in this case, it was a sit exercise with that leash pressure. Yeah, now you know how negative reinforcement is working. And the next question is, what is best now, positive or negative reinforcement? And I'll give you the answer in the next video. So what is best to use now when I want to teach my dog a new exercise? Is it positive reinforcement or is it negative reinforcement? To give you a clear answer on that, how about we have a look at the pros and the cons from each training system? When you have a look at positive training, the pros from this is you have a dog who is very engaged, very motivated, a dog who is very, very happy because he gets something out of it, such as a ball, such as food, and this is just great for him. This will release a lot of dopamine in his brain, and as a result from that, he's very, very happy. Is there a downside from positive training? Absolutely. The downside from positive reinforcement is, with positive reinforcement, you can teach your dog everything. You cannot make your dog stop doing something with positive reinforcement. That means to ignore unwanted behavior is just not possible. Let me give an example. When we have a look at positive training in general, positive only training. Then, if the dog is doing something right, he gets a reward, which is called positive reinforcement. In case the dog is not doing what you want, he gets nothing, which is called negative punishment. I will come to this point later on in this course and explain you this in a more detailed and precise way. For now, keep in mind, positive training works in the following way. The dog is doing something right and he gets something, which could be a ball or his food. In case the dog is not doing what you want, you can ignore it and the dog gets nothing, which is called a negative punishment. So, let me give you an example. Let's say I would teach my dog the recall in a positive only way. Means I would start in an environment where I don't have so much distraction. Let's say I start in my backyard. I call the dog and I motivate him to come to me, and as a reward I give him some kibbles of food or I play with him. This works perfect until the point comes that the distraction is higher than the reward. What do I mean by that? We go back to this recall. The dog knows when he comes, he gets a kibble of food, and when he comes, I play with him with a ball. Now, my dog is getting older. Let's say he's about 2 years of age. I go for a walk with him through the woods, and for whatever reason, a rabbit appears, and the dog is like, wow, and this triggers drive in him. Prey drive, he knows by nature, rabbit moves, prey drive, hunting, and get something into the stomach. This is just the law of nature. So what can happen now? The dog is chasing the rabbit because prey drive is triggered. You call your dog, you call him Pluto. If you're lucky, Pluto turns around and says, you know what? Stay there, don't move, I'll be right back. And don't forget my kibble of food, because this is the reward and at the same time the punishment. And the question is, when we say that a reward must be a reward, then the punishment must be a punishment as well. So there is a fair chance that the dog makes a decision between chasing the rabbit or getting the kibble of food. Chasing the rabbit, getting the kibble of food, chasing the rabbit, and the dog is gone. Means the lack of positive training only is you have no control. And now the question is it important to have control? In my humble opinion, I say yes. It is very important to control your dog in any situation because you are responsible for the dog and you have a responsibility for the environment, for the social environment. Means, imagine the dog is chasing the rabbit is crossing the street, the rabbit makes it to the other end of that street, your dog does not. Now you have two problems. First of all, you have to explain your family why you come home only with a leash. Second of all, what if a person is involved in this accident and it's maybe a deadly end for that person and you're responsible for that? Could you live with that? I couldn't. This is why I think control is important, but I cannot provide 100% control with positive training only. So, positive training has its advantages. The dog is happy and the dog likes to train with you. The lack is you have no control. This is one of the biggest benefits from negative learning. Negative learning, negative reinforcement. You remember the leash? We pull very gentle on the leash until the dog is doing what we want. Important is the timing and the dosage. We do this very, very gentle. And we will show you this in all of our training videos. For the sit, for down, for the healing, and you will see it is nothing. Less is more, let's put it this way. It is a way of teaching, it is a way of telling the dog what he's supposed to do, and at the end of the day, and this is the benefit from this training system, you can control it. And is control important and necessary? Absolutely. So, to answer the question, what is best, positive or negative training? I think positive only is not good because you cannot control it. Negative only is not good because the dog does not enjoy it so much. I mean, if someone tells you to go to work and you have to do it, but there is nothing in for you, there is no reward, then you don't like to go to work. And the same is true for your dog. So I think it is a balance from positive training and negative training, from positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement. And how we are putting these two training systems now together, this is what we are going to show you in tracking obedience and protection work. For now, lean back, think about it. If you need to watch it again, watch it one more time. Do not worry too much. Other people, they go to the university and study that stuff, what I just put in this small video. I hope it was comprehensive. If you have any further questions, feel always free to shoot us a message in our Facebook group, and we are more than happy to support and help you. For now, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Should I use a ball or should I use food in my training? This is a very, very common question. To give you an answer to that, we should understand the following. Especially in the obedience, there is a balance in between motivation and concentration. To get more motivation or to get more concentration, we have certain keys to achieve that. The key for concentration is food. The key for motivation is ball or a tuck or a sleeve or a bite pillow. Everything what comes with prey. In order to get the right balance now, you need to push the right buttons on your dog. First of all, when it comes to food training, the beauty of food training is you have a lower drive level, the dog is focused and concentrated, and this makes learning way easier for the dog. The requirement to do food training is your reward must be a reward. Means if you feed your dog at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and 1 hour later you're heading to the training field and the dog is FF, full and fat, then he will probably not take the kibbles of food as a reward. That means I'm a huge fan of food training, and I mean real food training. And this is how I do this with my dogs. I know exactly how much food they need per day, right? So what I do is I take a bowl, I fill it with the entire food ration for 1 day. And now, depending on how many times I am able to train, let's say you can do this once, then you take the whole ration. Better is to split it in 50-50. So what I can do is I take 50% of his food ration and I train in the morning. And I take the other 50% and I train in the afternoon or in the evening. So there is a saying, or actually it is a law, there is nothing for nothing. Means when you have a look at the nature, even the wolves, they have to do something in order to get something. They have to hunt to get their prey, to get food, to get something in their stomach. And have a look at our dogs. What is it what they have to do? They have to do pretty much nothing, right? They get their food once or twice a day and they do nothing for that. And I think this is a pity because food is a very, very good motivation for a dog to do something. This is a very good way for you to train your dog once or twice a day. But this requires that it is his regular food ration. And I love to train with his regular food. I don't do any special, and the reason to that is very simple. Let's say you start teaching your dog an exercise, and in the beginning the exercise is maybe not perfect, the dog is slow, and the whole thing is just not good. So you reward him with some kibbles of food. Later on down the road, when the dog is doing a better job, what are you going to give him now? You can try to reward him better by giving sausages or something special. So I try to play with that. For normal and good stuff, I give him food. Later on down the road, if he's doing something special, I always can reward him with a higher value, and this will motivate the dog even more. So this is the answer to food or ball. I start with food since it provides a lower drive level, because when you have a dog who's full of power and motivation and pretty much is screaming for his ball, then it can have a bad effect in your training, because too much drive is not good for learning. I give an example. Imagine you have a dog who sees the ball and starts to scream. He is very high in his drive level. Learning is very difficult up there. No, even more. Learning or in such a high drive level, this can cause stress, and stress is not good for learning. So this is why I start with food. Later on, I use the ball, and then I try to find a balance. Means if I feel in my obedience or in my tracking, for instance, that I need more focus and concentration, then I use more food. If I feel in my obedience, hey, the dog is very technical, he has a very good concentration, but I just need more power, then I use the ball. And there are some certain exercises, they require focus and concentration, whereas other exercises require power and motivation. And the only thing what you have to do is you have to use the right key. Let's give you an example. Let's say you want to do a sit out of motion. and your dog is supposed to do the sit exercise and then stay or remain focused on you while you're leaving. Does this exercise require power and motivation or focus and concentration? Focus and concentration. This is why I say, you know what? You rather want to reward him here with food, to give him a reward, to use positive reinforcement. So he's doing this more often in the future, the focus part, instead of using a ball. Because if you use a ball, it may happen that the dog starts to vocalize because he's frustrated. It may end up with the dog who's hovering in the sit exercise, which then will lead to a point deduction. So this is an exercise where you definitely should use food. This requires that he likes his food. This is why I do food training. On the other hand, there are some exercises such as the recall. Do you need here focus and concentration or power and motivation? Definitely power and motivation. This is why I would say, you know what? Call your dog and in this exercise, reward him with a ball to get the speed. And then it's all about to find the right balance. Means if I do the recall 10 times and I reward him 10 times with a ball, maybe it happens now that he's over-motivated and that he bumps into me. Not good, because I will lose points for that. So for the next training sessions, instead of using a ball, I use food. This will lower his drive level, increase his focus, and he's doing a more precise exercise. Then after another, let's say 2 or 3 weeks, after rewarding him only with food, it may end up with a dog who is super technical but slow. Then again, I just have to reward him a couple of times with my ball or with his ball, and he will increase power and motivation. And a good dog trainer always finds the balance from motivation and concentration in or before a trial. I hope this video was helpful. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Stress is not good for learning. You've probably heard about that, or you know it already. So in this video, I'm going to show you what can cause stress, what kind of signals does the dog show when he is stressed, and what actually happens in the body, and what does that mean for you and for your training. What can cause stress? Believe it or not, even too much drive can cause stress in a dog's body. That means if your dog is very, very high motivated for a ball or for a bite pillow, and he's almost getting insane just by seeing that ball, and by not rewarding him, the dog gets frustrated, and this can lead to a point that the dog is just getting stressed, and stress is not good for learning. So stress is not only caused by yelling at the dog, or when he's not doing what you want, you use the leash, or you just tell him, hey, stop it. This can also cause stress and release stress hormones into the body. So not only the negative part, but also the positive part, or too much from the positive, can cause stress. This is a very important information for you, because if you have such a ball junkie, then you want to lower the drive level, especially when you teach him an exercise. This is what can cause stress. What are the signals for stress? Very simple. Since the dog cannot talk in German or in English or in Spanish or in Italian, the dog uses the opposite of verbal communication, and this is nonverbal communication. That means with wagging the tail, the dog tries to show you, hey, I'm happy. When the dog shows you the teeth, then he tries to explain you, hey, don't go come one step closer, or I will attack you. And this is, amongst dogs or animals, normal to communicate nonverbal. Is that easy or difficult to read? No, absolutely not. When your dog sits next to you and he's licking his lips, putting his ears back, then he shows you, hey, I don't understand you and I'm pretty much stressed. So calm down, slow down, and try to explain it to me in another way. Or sometimes it's even better to just stop the training at this point, because once the body is flooded with stress hormones, the body goes into the emergency program. And how this works, I'm going to show you now. So what we have in each and every body, and the same is true for you and me, we have a stress level. And the stress level is usually on 0. Now, certain circumstances and situations can cause that the body release stress hormones. And this goes in a blink of an eye. It goes just like that. Unfortunately, it takes a while for the body to get rid of that. As long as the body is up here in that very high stress level, it triggers the EP, emergency program. What does that mean? You've probably heard from the 4 Fs: fight, flight, freeze, or flirt. If not, let me explain to you what they do. Since millions of years, we have that emergency program, which pretty much is responsible for that we are still here on planet Earth, because even Mr. Flintstone had this emergency program. Let's give an example. Mr. Flintstone, Fred Flintstone, went for a hunt, and suddenly there appeared a tiger, and he was like, "Woo," because what happened now is that stress hormones were released in his body, and now the emergency program kicks in, and now he has exactly 4 different options to react on that. The first one is he's like, "Holy crap, you will end up on my plate tonight." That means he puts all his energy into the fight mode. Option number 2, he's more like, before I end up on your plate, dear tiger, I rather run away. So he puts all his energy into the flight mode. Option number 3 is he freezes. And this is what you can see with animals, they play that, right? In the dangerous situation, they just pretend nothing happens. And the last one is flirt. This is what you usually can witness amongst puppies when you tell a little puppy, "Hey, stop doing this," because he just chewed on your favorite pairs of shoes or whatever. They run around in between your legs. They're licking their lips. The ears are banging. They're like, "Oh, come on. Please, it was not so bad. Please love me again." So the 4 Fs are pretty much the emergency program. As I said, it goes super quick for the body to release these stress hormones. It takes a while until you're back on 0. And since it takes a while, and I say usually it'll take in between 24 up to 48 hours, that means for you what? Imagine you do your obedience and you see that your dog is stressed. What's the best thing to do now? Just stop the training. Give him a ball, release some stress, let him walk, and stop the training. Because I think in that stress level, it is almost impossible for a dog to learn. Let me give an example for that. Imagine you're driving in your car, right? You're driving on a street, and suddenly someone overtakes you. And for whatever reason, in that moment, another car approaches from the front. And now you're like, woo, stress hormones, right? You're going full power on the brakes, and this guy who was overtaking you just makes it, and you can avoid a big accident. So what happens now in your body? Exactly the same. Stress hormones are released. Some people get wet hands, your breath a little bit, or your breath is heavier, your heartbeat is going up, so you're pretty much stressed. And exactly in this moment, your girlfriend or your boyfriend is calling you and he's like, "Hey, on your way home, can you do me a favor, sweetie? Please stop at the supermarket and get some milk." What's your reaction on that? You will probably answer, "Hey, you know what? Right now I have other problems than this milk because this and that happened." So even if you want to focus on that, you just can't because you're in that stress level. And I hope this was an example for you to compare this, because this is how a dog feels when he's in that stress level and we just wanna teach him something. We just continue training him because we drove 500 kilometers. We spent hours to come to that place. And now, is it difficult to read the stress signals? No, absolutely not. The hardest part is actually to accept them. And from now on, I want you to watch your dog with open eyes, be open-minded and respect. In case your dog shows you stress signals, you better stop it here, because from this point, it can only go downhill. Yeah, the importance of stress. I hope it was helpful for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. This video has some heavy stuff for you. In this video, I'm going to show you the difference in between reinforcement and punishment. But before we start, we have to figure out and clarify, when do I reinforce my dog and when do I punish my dog? And this is actually as simple as that. Every single time your dog is doing what you want him to do, you should reinforce this behavior, because this will increase the possibility and the chance that your dog shows you this particular exercise or behavior in the future more often. Versus every single time your dog is not doing what you want, you should punish him. And these are the technical terms. Unfortunately, nowadays, people use them very, very carefully. Some people are even afraid of using the word punishment in the context of dog training. But this is a part of dog training. Is punishment good or bad? See, this depends on the way how you look at it and how you apply it. Because Mother Nature shows us actually that punishment is a part of life. So let's have a look at this. We have reinforcement on the one hand, and I mark this green, and we have punishment on the other hand. Green because reinforcement means we reinforce wanted behaviors. These are all the things we'd like to have from our dog, the exercise, the behavior. And on the other hand, we have punishment, and we do only and always punish our dog if he's not doing what we want. And all you have to find is the balance from reinforcement and punishment. This was the easy part. Now we have, as you can see here, positive and negative, plus and minus. And this plus and minus does not stand for good or bad. It comes from the math and stands for plus addition, minus reduction. So all in all, we have 4 different options now. We have, for instance, positive reinforcement. We have negative reinforcement. We have positive punishment, and we have negative punishment. And this can be super confusing for people, right? I mean, how is it possible that a punishment, for instance, is positive? Positive, because this is what we have in our head. We always think that positive means something good and negative means something bad. And this is totally wrong in this case. The technical terms, they use it in a way that positive, you add something, and negative, you reduce something. So let's get started with it. Let's say you ask your dog to do something. Let's say you ask him to sit and he's doing it. Is it now that we have to reinforce this behavior, or is it that we have to punish him? Since we want him to sit and he's doing what we want, it has to be reinforcement. The only question now is it positive or negative reinforcement? See, this depends now on the consequence. If you ask your dog to sit and he's sitting and you give him a piece of food for that, then this is positive reinforcement because he's doing what you want. This means we have to reinforce it. And due to the fact that you give him something such as a kibble of food, a handful of food, or a ball, or a tuck, or whatever, you add something, this is why it is positive reinforcement. Means the dog does something, and the consequence for that is you get something. It's as simple as that. Let's say you ask your dog to sit, and he's not sitting, and you are not rewarding him for that. What would this be? The good news is you have only 3 options left. It is, first of all, punishment because we asked him to do something and he's not doing it. So we have to punish him. And since we are not giving him this piece of food, we take this away or we just do not reward him with that. It is negative punishment. It is a punishment for the dog because he gets nothing. So the dog does not. And the consequence is no reward. This is called negative punishment. On the other hand, let's say I ask my dog to sit and I use the leash at the same time. I pull very gentle on that lead until he sits. And you know this already because you have seen this in a video prior to this one here. This is called negative reinforcement. Means the dog does something and the reward is I consider that gentle leash pressure as a help. The help stops. Isn't that interesting? When I want to teach my dog something, I can do this with positive reinforcement, and I also can do it with negative reinforcement. This is pretty much the reason why we combine positive and negative reinforcement in our training system, because we want to have both advantages from positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement. Positive reinforcement gives you a dog who's engaged, powerful, and motivated. Negative reinforcement, on the other hand, gives you control. So the dog is showing and performing the exercises, the behaviors, anytime and anywhere, regardless from the distraction he's surrounded with or from his motivation level. Last but not least, we have positive punishment. And this sounds not right? This sounds weird. How is it possible that a punishment can be positive? Very simple. This is a very, very special part of the 4 quadrants, and this you should use either only in case if your dog knows the exercise, but he's not doing it, but you know for sure that he knows it, for instance, the recall under distraction. Here you could use positive punishment, or you want to make your dog stop doing something. For instance, my dog every Sunday morning jumps on the breakfast table and he steals my scrambled eggs. Is it now that I have to teach him to go down, or is it more that I have to make him stop doing that? Since he's doing it already, I have to make him stop doing this. And this is positive punishment. And positive punishment is nothing but he's doing something he's not supposed to do, or he's just not listening, even though he knows the exercise. And this ends up with a correction. So the dog does not. And this leads to a correction. So what is a correction, by the way? Very simple. After the dog is disobeying, you add something. For some dogs, which are very sensitive, it is enough when you say, stop it. And it's like, wow, I will never ever do this again because I don't want to destroy our relationship and it's really, really bad for me. With other dogs, you scream at them and they're like, yeah, so what? Next. Then you may have to use a leash pop. For some dogs, it is really necessary that you give them a little pop on the lead, that they say, okay, I don't want this anymore. I don't want to experience this anymore. And this will then lead to the point that the dog will stop doing that certain behavior. So let's recap that. Reinforcement and punishment. We only and always want to reinforce our dog if he's doing something right. Therefore, we have positive reinforcement. He's doing something and he gets something. On the other hand, we have negative reinforcement. We use or apply, in our case, a little leash pressure, very gentle, until the dog is doing what we want. The moment the dog is doing what we want, we stop pulling on that lead, and this part here, the help stops. Then, and this is what we're using a lot in our training too, is negative punishment. The dog is not doing what we want and he gets no reward. This is pretty much what you also use when you are in the teaching phase. So all in all, we have positive reinforcement when we want to teach something, we have negative reinforcement when we teach something, and we also use negative punishment when we teach our dog a new exercise. And we only use, if necessary, a correction if the dog knows the exercise, but he's not doing it, or we have to make him stop doing something. For instance, if my dog has created a habit, and the habit is to jump on people, I have to make him stop doing that. Because imagine my dog would jump on a little child, let's say in the age of 3, 4, or 5 years, and I have a Rottweiler with 45 kilos. Guess what happens? The Rottweiler jumps once, and the little child falls back on his head, and you know the rest. It's just terrible. So let's also dive into the part of how to make a dog stop doing something. And this part here, this positive punishment, I will cover in one of our next videos. I hope you have now a better understanding from the 4 quadrants. It is a heavy load, and it took me a while to get the hang of it. So maybe you want to just pause the course for a second, lean back, think about it, and if you want, you can always come back to this lesson, watch it again, and watch it again until you are a master in the 4 quadrants. I would like to say thanks for watching, and I'll see you in one of our next videos. Have a good one.